What's up guys, Andrew here on my channel Geared Inc., where I get to share what I'm passionate about with you. And on my channel, that's PC tech, games, and gear. Before we get into today's topic, just a quick reminder, if you haven't entered the PC giveaway going on the channel right now, there's only a couple days left to enter. That is a random giveaway, so good luck to everyone who's already entered it. But make sure you do if you haven't. And 12,500 subs by 2019, we're doing another giveaway. So make sure to support my channel, help me grow by getting subbed, unless you're just tired of me giving away free stuff. RGB, RGB, RGB. I seriously can't say that enough because it's everywhere right now. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, RGB is pretty cool. And especially the product we're going to be talking about today, but man, I think my next build, I'm going to do like an anti-RGB build. So when we're talking about the product, we were talking about RGB RAM kit. This is from UpHere, a kind of obscure brand, but something that was very highly reviewed on Amazon. So I thought, hey, it's a good price. I want to do that for my wife's kit of RAM. So I bought it, and that's the video that we're going to be talking about today. Now, I'm going to go over the installation method I used and kind of my overall thoughts on the product itself. So without further ado, let's dive in. So the RGB kit itself actually looks pretty good. It's a brushed aluminum finish. It's nice clean lines, which will contrast nicely with the lighting itself. Has a male and female 3-pin connector, so you can either connect it to your motherboard, your power source, or you can potentially daisy chain it depending on what you'd like to do. Now, something I wanted to bring up, which I thought was worth mentioning, is that technically you could basically unscrew the heat spreaders and put it over your existing RAM without actually doing anything else. Obviously, this would mean you'd get worse heat transfer, so it's not something I would recommend. We're going to go over the right way to do this, and the kit around I'm using is the LPX DDR4 from Corsair. This is an 8GB kit. There's some basic tools we're going to need, starting off with a razor blade to help us cut through some of the thermal paste on the RAM. You're also going to need a flathead screwdriver as well as a Phillips head screwdriver to help pry the RAM heat spreader apart and install the new one. And finally, either a heat gun, or in my situation, I borrowed my wife's blow dryer. Yes, my wife's blow dryer, it was not mine. Placing the stick of RAM on a flat, secure surface, you're going to move your heat gun or blow dryer slowly back and forth, heating up the thermal pad underneath. Make sure you don't stay in any one spot too long. If the RAM is hot enough, you should be able to start to pry apart the heat spreader with either your flathead or a razor blade. Now, be incredibly careful when you're doing this not to damage the stick of RAM itself, and honestly wear gloves. I burnt myself initially because I wasn't paying attention, and yeah, that stick of RAM got really hot. So make sure that you're exercising every safety precaution you should be when you're doing this, and take your time being very careful. And being very careful, you want to take a razor blade once you've gotten enough space and begin to cut the thermal paste away from the RAM PCB. Again, take your time with this because obviously it's very easy to cut yourself or to dig into the memory modules, which could potentially ruin your RAM. So take it slow, but what you're basically doing is cutting into the thermal pad that's underneath the heat spreader so that you can basically pry it off and remove it. Now, once you actually pry off the heat spreader, you might be left over with a mess like this. I don't recommend using a razor by any means. It's too easy to damage it. I recommend using a solvent to remove it. To solve this problem, we're going to use Arctic Clean Thermal Material Remover. This is safe to use on the RAM. It's great for both thermal pads and thermal paste. I've used it for years, and it's a very well-reviewed product. Now, after doing that, what you're going to do is remove some of the thermal pad with your fingers so that you can get to the adhesive underneath, and kind of liberally apply the solution to the area that you're trying to remove. You're going to let that sit for about 60 seconds. Now, once that's sat for a second, you're going to basically take a tissue or a napkin or something, and you're just going to slowly wipe away the thermal compound that's underneath. Sometimes you're going to have to basically do this step a couple of times, and when you're done, you should get something that's much cleaner like this. Now that we have our clean stick of RAM, we are going to prepare it to be installed with the new RGB kit. So basically, we're going to use a Phillips head screwdriver, unscrewing both the screws on the heat spreaders so that we can fit in our stick of RAM. Now, with the RAM kit, we get included thermal pads, so you don't have to worry about going out and buying those yourself. Just apply them into the areas that basically we removed the thermal pads before, and then we're just going to take the stick of RAM and slot it against the heat spreader so we're making full contact with both the bridge on the top and the heat spreader on the side. Now we're just going to rinse and repeat for the memory modules, and now you'll notice that the memory modules are facing the side that we are going to basically put in our screws. And so once that's done, we're simply going to put in the screws that we took out before to finish off installing the new RGB kit onto our RAM. Now, something I want to quickly point out is that the heat spreader doesn't cover all the memory modules with this kit, well, at least with this piece of RAM, and with the thermal pads, I put them initially down too low. So just for you guys to know that when you're putting this on, make sure that you line it up correctly so you don't have it hanging out like I did. The RAM also comes with this pad that essentially adds a little more thickness so that when you're installing it, if the thermal pad isn't touching the heat spreader, you can basically add this to create an extra level of thickness so it touches. It also comes with these screws and spacers depending on the RAM kit you have, if you needed the extra room. Now thankfully I had already measured out the RAM clearance, so I wasn't worried about clearing my CPU cooler, but because this RAM now does sit high, remember that if you are going to be installing this to a motherboard you already have a CPU cooler installed on, make sure that it is going to have enough clearance, otherwise you're going to have to remove your CPU cooler and reinstall it after. The motherboard I have doesn't have any extra fan connectors, so basically what I had to do is daisy chain it with the front fans by disconnecting them and connecting it to my power source, which did have a male connection for the 3-pin, and then reconnecting it to the fan in the front. So remember that if you do buy this, that you need to have enough fan headers on your motherboard to make it work, or you need to have enough fan headers for your power source. Once that was done, we fired it up, and man, does it look pretty. It basically has a breathing pattern through all the full spectrums of light that you see with any regular RGB, and I think it matches up nicely. So there you have it, guys. I honestly thought the RAM looked really, really good. Installation was not a huge pain at all, and it's reasonably priced. Now, a couple of quick things. There is no onboard controller for this, so you aren't able to change either the way the lighting works or the colors themselves. There's not like software or anything out for it yet. So basically, you're just gonna get that breathing spectrum light that we saw earlier. Outside of that, I would say the other thing that kind of irked me was that it did not have full coverage over the memory modules on the RAM itself, but that's kind of a slight grievance. Overall, I think it's actually a really good product for the price. Now, obviously, when talking about price, if you take into consideration things like thermal remover, or even if you don't, it almost doesn't make sense to buy this product if you want to buy RGB RAM, because if you price compare, what you're going to notice that most RGB kits are only going to be about $10 to $15 more than the actual static non-RGB kit, or the equivalent kit, while this could be $20, $30 if you're getting things like thermal remover, if you have to buy tools. So who is this product really for? Well, for people like me who already had a stick, basically a kit of RAM that was in RGB, and I wanted to add basically an RGB function to that kit of RAM. Or if you just like the way it looks, which I honestly do, I think it might be worth the money or upgrade. Although I wouldn't be, I personally wouldn't switch out a RGB kit that was already on your RAM for this. Doesn't really make sense to me, but obviously if you liked it or you want to do that, I don't see anything wrong with it. So if you guys like this video, go ahead and leave me a big thumbs up. If you didn't, go ahead and leave me a thumbs down. All the products I use today will be down in the description below. So remember, if you want to support my channel directly, you can do so by using my Amazon affiliate link. All the affiliate links for this stuff will be in my description. So if you want to buy any of it, you can, and support me directly as well. As always, thank you to my Patreon. You guys are making all these giveaways happen because I am all self-funded, so thank you so much for your financial support. All my Twitch subs, we are having a lot of fun on the weekends, guys, so if you want to become a Twitch subscriber, you can do so there as well. If you like to watch gaming, or if you want to, kind of interact with me there, join the Discord if you haven't already. If you have PC questions, you can always hit me up directly with the DM, and I always get back to those. Outside of that, guys, thank you for all your support. Make sure to hit that sub button, hit the bell icon so you can know when these videos drop. And as always, we hope to see you next time here on Geared Inc.